So everyone and their mother has covered the news that came from the Overwatch 2 PvP livestream made a couple of days ago. I decided to make a video. It took me a little bit of while. I have I wanted to think of it. I didn't just want to kind of jump on the bandwagon. Want to make sure that this came out in a concise manner and kind of where I had time to digest it, test a couple of things, and also to talk to one of my great friends known as Cold. He was a 4.6k off-tank player. He played in trials. Just a really, really good players, just an amazing, not just like off-tank player. He was 4.2k on DPS. Just a general, really like hardcore gamer, if you can say it like that. Had a lot of talks with him, a lot of discussion about how this 5v5 is going to play out. And I think that this is a little bit less of a quoting what Blizzard says, and hopefully it's going to be a little bit more of an educational video coming from me, who is a private coach in Overwatch and was a contenders coach who's been, up in high, a good ways into GM multiple times, both as tank and also as DPS, and also after getting some opinions from Cole, which I was actually from really good thoughts and opinions. So, with no further ado, let's just get right into this. Beautiful. Love the gamers as always. My name is Jonal. Like on the video, a comment, and subscribe, and hopefully sharing this video around will hopefully get another round of discussion with the community, get a little bit other opinions. All that is of course greatly appreciated. And my Twitter and my Twitch, link down in the description if you want to drop a follow for when I start streaming, and of course Discord server, link in the description as always too if you want to join an awesome community. Now, the first thing that I wanted to say is we have to play the Overwatch 2 like their 5v5 mode with their balancing that they've done to the tank role to be sure, but as of yet things looks really bad. And when I watched the live stream, I was like, oh, this is really bad. Then I thought about it, it might not be as bad. And then I started talking to Cold, and then I went back to, I don't think this is that good. And there's a pretty good argument already in the beginning. If you think about what role to reduce a slot on, tank is kind of weird, right? Because if you think like two supports, so the support role, there are some synergy, but it's not like if you see an Ana, if I say Ana, you think, what is the other support here, right? It's more like, what is my team playing? What do we need? What does the map say, right? Stuff like that. If you play DPS, it's very much the same. If someone picks Widow, you might pick McCree, but that's not because like Widow and McCree has insane synergy, right? It's because it's opened up some gameplay opportunities. There's pros and cons to both picks. There's a way to balance out the team comp and whatnot, right? Depending on also what tanks you're playing and what the opposing side are playing. But when it comes to tanks, there are actually synergy already. If I say Ryan, you say Zarya. If I say Winston, you might say D.Va or Ball, or maybe even Zarya. For that matter, if I say Orisa, you think Sigma or Hog, right? There are synergies with these, and it is a role that is based the most on synergy. Like the off-tank synergizes with the main tank. That is like how you play that. So it is actually, in my opinion, the worst role to reduce a slot into. And that is very much the first thing to kind of talk about. Also, the fact that the tank role is such an important role, I understand by removing it, that is a drastic change, and that might be what they're doing. But it is still kind of, how do I say it? The issue is, a lot of the tanks work really poorly alone. And it kind of comes back a little bit to balancing, which I will talk later in the video, and a little bit in decisions like these. And it's not like, again, it's not that they say they are testing out 5v5. They said in Overwatch 2 it will be 5v5. That doesn't seem like this hasn't gone through the pros. This hasn't gone through high-elo testers. From what I could see from whatever they were showing from their capture event, it doesn't seem like the people that is testing these patches or the Overwatch 2 and their balancing is that high elo, or at least they don't have consistent high elo players. Players like Super, it was his first time seeing this, and they have already decided, without, for what it seems like, consulting professional players and high elo players, and actually letting them play the game and play the patch. Without that, they have made this decision that this is how Overwatch 2 is going to be played, and I think that's a really poor way of executing it. If you go back, and I'm not going to show any footage because I don't want to hang anybody out on YouTube, but if you go back to the capture one, there are numerous examples where you can see that the players are not very good, where you can see a Ryan standing alone and the DPS is just not focusing him because they don't notice it, where you see people missing all their shots and not being able to pull them off, right? There are just all of this thing where their testers and potentially some of their devs as well aren't that high elo, and then it becomes really difficult to trust their decision when they do a balancing like that, because, and I will talk about this a little bit later in the video, if you look at how they design the maps, coming later in the video, and what they have now decided to do with the tanks, it is really, really weird. Also the fact that, in my opinion, making like a one super tank isn't always the best idea. I'll talk a little bit about it later, and my third point, therefore, because if not, then I will just keep rambling about balance right now, which again comes in the end. I think this is a shitty move to do to the pro scene. And no, we shouldn't think about the pro scene when we talk about balance. We shouldn't, like, in the way of, like, we shouldn't think about, like, who's gonna lose their job. But you kind of should. When you have the Overwatch League, which is sponsored, which is run by Blizzard, when you have that, you know that 1/6 of the roster will be removed now from play. You know that there will be a stock reduction in tank players on that team, and it's not as easy. There's some people that want that you have an off tank and a main tank player, and depending on what tanks are supposed to be played on that map, that you'll swap in between them. But also, the main tank player is normally the guy that does all the leading in the team. He's a lot of time the one that calls the pushes and what to do and where they're going and so on. He's a lot of the guy that also does target calls. So having to swap between those two is actually really difficult. You kind of want one concise leader on the team. So if you can have one player that you can practice as a team leader that understands the team and so on, then why would you ever divide that into two and then get less practice on both, right? I think that this is a huge betrayal to the pro scene, both for scrims and stuff like that. And I think that just is a really dickish move, especially again when they haven't tested this with the pros. It's not again like Super came out there and was like, "Oh, I have never seen this before. It's interesting that you guys are changing how stuns work, right?" It seems like again for what we know, the high elo players hasn't touched this, and then there's a really move to then affect the professional careers and the livelihood of people that have invested so much time, gambled on this game, put love into this game, and then they just like remove essentially their job or make their job essentially reduce the need for more players in the job, and essentially just fucks with people's career and future. I think that's not a very nice move, and I think Blizzard should have thought about that before they once again came out and said, this is how it's supposed to be. Again, it's not a test. It's like Overwatch 2 will be 5v5. Deal with it. Now fire half of your tank roster. Now, in the end, I want to talk about balance. This is the biggest thing. Again, that's so difficult to talk about without actually playing it and blah, blah, blah. This might feel really good, but I cannot see how it is physically possible. And again, I understand that they do changes to the heroes. They're buffing the tanks and they're giving them more abilities and blah, 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 blah. But I don't think, one, that they really understand essentially now exactly what they're doing. And even if they, do a lot of this, I think it would be very difficult to let the tanks feel useful in, like, essentially, like, getting all the tanks. Like, I can see Wrecking Ball being really good. I can see Winston sometimes being kind of good, like as a solo diver, but even that can sometimes be difficult. If they really give a lot of Matrix Diva, she can probably be kind of good. I think this is the wrong way of doing it. I want to talk about how they should balance tanks instead of doing this shit. But when it comes down to the balancing of it, solo Ryan sucks ass. And he just does. He's either so oppressive in health and survivability and shield that it's just, fuck it. He's either like so OP that is just frustrating. The same with Winston. They talked about, you can charge up Winston's Tesla coil or Tesla gun so you can fire like this stream of lightning, and you can jump someone. Then you can hit them with this, and then you can like do your your slam damage and your melee and essentially just delete someone. like, if they make Winston, if they compensate for the fact that he can't be, if a Winston tries to die without a D.Va or a Zarya, he will just be shot out of the air, right? Like, it's so difficult for him to actually go and dive someone. So if they make him super tanky, or even more so, they give him like an insane amount of burst, right? Then it's like then it will be equivalent to having like a nano blade just jump on you because the Winston can burst you. Like, imagine playing like McCree and then the Winston just like jumps for you. You can't kill him, you physically can't kill him, and just deletes you, and then just jumps out again. Can you imagine how frustrating that is? If you talk about how the tanks are being played, solo Rein, solo Zarya, solo Winston, all of these are so easily bullied, especially the Rein and the Winston. The Rein has to be allowed to push up and close the gap. Every time he drops his shield, he will just get shot at, and it would be difficult for him to move up and claim space if his DPS is not following right behind them, which one is difficult sometimes for DPSs due to their difference in health pools. A DPS cannot position himself like a Zarya to cover the Rein so the Rein can push. And at the same time, if, the Rein position himself in a way that DPS can stand, then a lot of times the DPS might not be efficient, because again, the Rein needs to push up and be close range. And without getting bubbles or matrixes for him, and the same for a Winston, once again, trying to push up, he will get poked and harassed, he tries to jump, and then, like, you just need, like, a Sen and a Soldier. Discord him, and then just both of them look at the Winston. And then Winston just dies mid-jump. Again, you can just anti the Rein or the Winston, and there's no way of cleansing it with a Zarya bubble. It is so difficult to play these main tanks, even when you give them resistance to CC, just because every time they try to do a move, you will just fuck them up, right? Like, you can just break the Rein shield, and then the Rein can't move, and it's so easy with damage in Overwatch to break shields like that. Unless, again, you give Rein a billion shields, where at that point, he just becomes really oppressive and not fun to play against. And again, there's some people that's like, oh, we remove a tank because no one wants to play tank. That speeds up queue time. That is not a solution. It's not a solution to the problem if we just remove the problem. Then we haven't solved it, we just made it disappear, right? You should make tanks fun. You should make tanks engaging. Instead of giving D.Va shotguns, give her like 50 cal guns, for example, right? So now she requires some aim. Give her some fun movement stuff, and maybe reduce her health so she's less tanky. Would do something like that. Makes the tanks less like big, hulking, oppressing players, and make them fun and engaging to play, and giving them fun and interesting high skill kits instead of just pure stat blocks where it doesn't feel as fun. And then you can rather reduce some of their health pools and stuff like that, and rather make two tanks more brawly, so you have like two brawlers that's less tanky, less oppressive, less shieldy, but far more like high skill when it comes to mechanics and stuff like that, right? Then you can start doing stuff like that, right? That would be more engaging, in my opinion, compared to just removing one of them. And you can even see this with how they design their maps when it comes to balancing. They want someone to play solo Rein, for example, but then they build maps with a lot of high grounds. A lot of the maps that they talked about on the live stream was like, oh, this is so good, there's so much high ground control, look how dynamic it is, look how vertical it is. And does the balancing team not understand that a lot of high grounds, a lot of like these crazy angles makes it difficult for tanks to work, especially tanks like Rein? It is so difficult to play a Rein when there's a billion angles and a billion high grounds. That it's just difficult. And the fact that they don't even know yet, they have made this decision, but they don't know if they're going to rework any of the map. Because I was asked, are you going to rework the existing maps? And they said, maybe. We don't know yet. Can you try to imagine playing a solo tank on Hanamura on attack? Can you think how difficult is it now with Zarya bubbles to get through that choke point? With help of an off tank like a hog to claim space for the other tank player? How difficult is it now? Can you imagine how difficult it is? Because the VS players just become stronger. You're trying to make tanks remove one and then buff the tank to make them more attractive, but playing solo tank isn't fun. I talked this extensively with Cole. Can you imagine going into a solo queue game and you don't want to play Ryan? You want to play, you can't play Ryan, right? Like, you can't play every single tank. So now in current meta, then you can, like, maybe you can find something out. Maybe you have a guy that can play Winston. You can play something else, right? You can kind of work with your team to find out, hey, I can play this. You play that. Like, you can make up some tank duos. But in the meta they're talking about, it's gonna be like, can you play ball? Because you're the only tank we have, and we need ball, and ball is meta. So play ball or we lose. Or play Ryan or we lose. And at that point, it's like, that's not fun. You can't be as aggressive as a Zarya player because you don't have a Ryan to back you up with. It's gonna be like, what do you want her for her second bubbles? Do you want the DPSs to push in front of the Zarya? Does the Zarya have to constantly spin around to bubble your DPSs? What is your idea here, Blizzard? Because I don't understand it, and Cole didn't understand it. You're making tanks less attractive. And if you, as a tank player, or if you ever played tank and you thought it was horrible because you have to rely somewhat on your DPSs to help with damaging, as a solo tank, you don't have to rely on them. You are completely to their whim. If your DPS doesn't clear your off angles, which normally your off tank can do very easily and very naturally because he's playing with you, so he understands what your struggles are. If your DPS doesn't do that, if they don't control the high ground, which again you could make off tank players do from time to time, if there's nothing like that, if they don't back you up when you try to move, where normally would have a Zarya or a Hog or a D.Va to back you up damage-wise, to help you clear their front line, help you push the DPSs and supports, so you can get those kills, comboing your shields, your bubbles, playing that dynamic. If you don't have that, and you remove one of them, then you better fucking hope your DPSs are doing that for you. You jump in as a run, you put up your shield, you better hope your DPSs are doing something. If they're not, if they're busy dueling, if they're not super active and understands that they're supposed to play with your Ryan like that, which is not natural, because again, you're not a tank. You don't position like that as a DPS player. Well, then guess what? Tough out of luck. And if you, on the other team, you have a tank that doesn't, for example, again, you have like a Hammer that constantly keeps flanking, you have a Hog that constantly keeps flanking or something like that, then you have nothing in your main group to stopping the opposing side for just pushing in on your squishy line. And again, you can say, oh, but you know, they only have one tank as well, so it's difficult to push. But if they play the right team composition and they pick the right tank, like they pick up Ryan, they pick some Lucio, they get some Reaper in there or some Doomfist or something like that to go ham, and you have a ball or you have a D.Va or a Ryan. A D.Va, for example, is really good. You have a D.Va, you just run into the D.Va and just destroy it. Like pick a Sim or something, just run into the D.Va with your Ryan, right? And just destroy that one guy, and all of a sudden it's this. You're forcing to play Ryan, or you can't play anything else because there's no other way to strengthen the main group. And it becomes this dynamic where balancing it is so fucking stupid. It becomes either the main tank, the solo tank, is going to get bullied out of existence by the opposing side, or you have to play very specific meta tanks, or else fuck you, because there's no alteration, there's no synergy, there's no way of coordinating with some other guy. You can't have a main tank and an off tank that helps claim space and help off angle. You can't have any of that. You have a solo guy, a solo tank, and it reduces a lot of the team play and a lot of the dynamic, which actually makes Overwatch. If you don't want tanks to be there with shields and stuff like that, and you want tank to be more attractive, balance your fucking heroes so they're fun, so they take skill, there's it's clippable, it's flashy, it's cool. Make it like that. Don't make them clunky stat blocks that are boring. Don't make Orissas where you pop down a shield and hold mouse run behind the shield with your big LMG. That's boring compared to playing McCree or Wither or Genji or Hanzo. Make your tanks fun to play, engaging to play, then people will fucking play them. And if they're so oppressive, then change how the tanks, how shields, and how health is viewed in the game. But don't just remove one of them, because the synergy part of tanks, it's the only role in the game that naturally has really good synergy. And it is so frustrating when I see devs, when I see them do this, because I think this is the wrong way. And again, especially when it doesn't feel like they have thought this through. They have made the decision without thinking through it. They haven't introduced it to pros, clearly, because Super, who has good communication with the Overwatch team, clearly didn't fucking know it in advance. They even said that on the stream. And at that point, it just becomes this like, what are you doing? Who are you playtesting? There was a Zenyatta on the stream who missed every single shot. Like at least like 10 or 12 shots. There was not a single one that hit anything. And I don't understand. Who are you balancing for? Who is actually checking all this? It is infuriating. It is actually infuriating. I don't understand why they are doing it like that. Yeah, so that's it for this video. I think that this is a bad decision. Again, it might be really, really good. It's just absolutely amazing. Like, it might be really, really amazing. For all I know, this might be the most fun game ever, and it's great that they're experimenting, but it doesn't think like they actually thought this through. And instead of thinking it through properly, it feels like they kind of just like giving it to some people that is like, I don't know, plat, diamond, somewhere in that elo, some gold players, some silver players, maybe like a masters, and then just like, oh yeah, this seems fun, this is fun, this is fine. And then you watch the stream and you see like a billion mistakes, and they're not punishing positioning, and so it doesn't seem like they're actually testing the gameplay as it's meant to be played. That's why it's so important to let pros touch it, because the pro players played optimally. They find the most optimal strat. So if you find out that you can just bully the main tank, then they will do that. If they found out that that solo tank is too strong because of how the buffs are, they will figure that out relatively fast. Give it to the professionals, because they are the ones, no matter when people say don't balance after pro play because we don't want pro player meta, it is the pros that design the meta. The meta is the most optimal way of playing it, and the pros are gonna play the most optimally, not the people in gold. So let the pros listen to them, watch how they play. You don't need to, do exactly what they say, but at least let those guys that are really good at the game keep a hand on it. And sure, if you want some casual people and some people in plat also touch it, that's great as well. Nobody ever said that was a bad idea, but you should at least make sure that your professional players, your high elo players, get to touch it, get to interact with it, and get feedback. And the fact that Super didn't seem to have that connection and didn't seem to have ever play tested it himself is mind-baffling when they have made this decision, which is such a huge part that it didn't give one of the best tank players in the league, in the game itself, the chance to fucking test out how solo Ryan is. If there's one guy that would understand how that would feel, it would be him. I don't understand this decision. I think it's really, really bad. And that's the end of this video. Please share this around. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I hope you guys have a great day. I just had to get this shit off my chest. Please do take care of the positive. Of course, take care of others, but it's really important that you take care of yourself as well. Tell somebody that you love them. As always, my name has been Jonal, and you guys keep the enemy in your crosshair.